Happens when a giant cable news network completely reshapes its identity, breaks away from the legendary NBC News umbrella, and rebrands for a totally new era. It's a fascinating look at corporate strategy and audience loyalty, and we're going to get right into it.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving headfirst into the massive programming shakeup happening right now over at the newly minted MS Now. With a brand new parent company, Versant Media, the network is aggressively overhauling its lineup as they gear up for those incredibly high-stakes November midterms. It's honestly a masterclass in television strategy, and we're going to break down exactly how it's all unfolding.
Here's how we're breaking things down today. First, life after NBC News. Second, the weekday domino effect. Third, Velshi takes primetime. And finally, enter Jacob Soboroff.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Life After NBC News, and preparing for the 2026 midterms.
We're looking at a pretty stark contrast between the network's past and where it's heading. Late last fall, the network we all knew as MSNBC started separating from NBC News, eventually rebranding as MS Now under the ownership of Versant Media. And hey, this wasn't just a fresh coat of paint. They lost some familiar on-air talent who decided to stay with NBC, which basically forced MS Now to rebuild and figure out a completely independent identity. And the timing? Absolutely critical, right as the political world is laser-focused on the 2026 midterm election cycle.
But, while a lot is changing, they aren't throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. To keep things stable for their dedicated viewers, the network is keeping several heavyweights exactly where they are. We're talking Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, Chris Hayes, Ari Melber, Jen Posse, and Lawrence O'Donnell. They are all holding on to their familiar time slots. When a network goes through a massive corporate split like this, holding on to those core, recognizable voices is absolutely crucial to keep your audience grounded.
Moving right along to Section 2, the weekday domino effect, how one single change shifts the whole schedule.
Think of a TV lineup like a giant, complicated puzzle. You literally cannot move one piece without bumping into the others. And this entire network-wide reshuffle, this huge domino effect, was actually sparked by just one request. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski over at Morning Joe decided they wanted to ease up on their daily early morning grind.
And that brings us to the magic number, 3 hours. Morning Joe is officially shrinking from a grueling 4-hour marathon down to a 3-hour block, running from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern. Sure, it gives the hosts a well-deserved break, but it instantly blew a massive 1-hour hole right in the middle of the morning schedule. And just like that, the first domino falls.
So, with Morning Joe wrapping up at 9 a.m., MSN Now is sliding Stephanie Ruhle right into that newly opened slot. Her show, Money, Power, Politics, is perfectly timed for the 9:30 a.m. Wall Street opening bell, which really leans into her business background. Then, at 11 a.m., we've got a new hire, Peter Alexander, who just came over from NBC News, taking the desk. And right after that, at noon, Alicia Menendez will be anchoring her new weekday show, On the Line. To cap off the daytime and early evening shifts, we have Katie Tur anchoring The Moment at 2 p.m., cutting through the daily noise with our sharp political analysis. And later on, at 7 p.m., Luke Russert is officially hopping on to the weeknight as a co-anchor, joining the roundtable discussion alongside Simone Sanders-Townsend and Michael Steele.
That brings us to Section 3, Velshi takes primetime. The ripple reaches late night.
Now, because Stephanie Ruhle moved to the mornings, that ripple effect crashed right into the 11 p.m. hour. And if you're wondering why Ollie Velshi got the tap for that vacancy, the data paints a pretty clear picture. In May, his weekend morning show saw a 17% jump in total viewers year over year and a staggering 46% gain in the key news demographic. You just don't ignore numbers like that. MSN Now clearly saw the momentum and rewarded Velshi with a super-coveted weekday primetime promotion.
So let's track the logic step by step. Step 1, Velshi leaves his wildly successful weekend morning block. Step 2, he officially takes the reins of the 11th hour at 11 p.m. on weekdays, starting June 15th, replacing Stephanie Ruhle. But here's the catch. By fixing their late-night puzzle, MS Now accidentally triggered Step 3. They created a massive 3-hour void right smack in the middle of their Saturday and Sunday lineup. Which leads us to our final part, Section 4. Enter Jacob Soboroff, filling the weekend void with human connection.
When talking about his new gig on his Substack, Soboroff wrote this really powerful line. I love human beings. They give me hope even in the darkest of times. For Soboroff, who's been with the network since 2015, by the way, journalism has always been about the real people on the ground, not just the politicians in Washington. It's a deeply empathetic approach to news, and MS Now is really banking on it to hook weekend viewers.
Here is the rundown on his new setup. The show is titled Connect with Jacob Soboroff. It debuts June 13th, and it completely takes over that huge 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern block on both Saturday and Sunday. But what's really unique here is the location. This is actually going to be MSNBC's very first show based out of Los Angeles. Plus, he's not just going to be chained to a desk. He's maintaining a dual role, continuing his hard-hitting work as a senior political and national reporter.
And honestly, that field-to-studio pipeline is the exact vibe the network is leaning into. They want to translate his gritty, street-level reporting right to a dynamic weekend anchor desk. We're talking about a journalist who covered the No King's Day protests, who's been relentlessly reporting from the southern border, and who authored the books Firestorm and Separated. The whole goal here is to bring the urgency and the humanity of the field straight into the studio, making the news feel a whole lot more personal and immediate.
So after watching this giant domino effect completely reshape the network, it all boils down to this one big, provocative question. With Versant Media now calling the shots and a totally overhauled, carefully calculated lineup from dawn to late night, is MSTI now truly ready for the incredibly consequential 2026 midterms? They've placed their bets, they've shifted the puzzle pieces, and they've locked in their talent. Now it's up to you, the viewers, to decide. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we keep tracking the strategies shaping our media landscape.